Camping gear is changing in a way you might not notice at first. The biggest upgrades aren't always the loudest or most futuristic. They're the ones quietly replacing the frustrating parts of a camping trip. From setup and storage to power, cooking, and shelter, a new generation of gear is giving campers fewer reasons to put up with the old way of doing things. And once you see what these products are designed to replace, it becomes pretty easy to understand why campers are switching. Today, we're looking at 5 camping gadgets that are quietly changing the way people camp. You'll find links to every product in the description below. OUTZAC Pico Pump. The annoying part of setting up camp isn't always the tent. Sometimes it's what you have to inflate before you can even sleep. After a long day outdoors, manually filling a sleeping pad can feel like one more chore you really don't need. The OUTZAC Pico Pump takes that job and shrinks it into something that can practically disappear inside your pack. At just 1 ounce, this tiny electric pump can deliver up to 350 liters of airflow per minute and inflate a sleeping pad in around 30 seconds. It runs through USB-C from a compatible power bank, so there's no separate bulky battery pack to carry, and it can also deflate gear when it's time to leave. The appeal isn't really about having another gadget. It's about replacing a tiring task with something that weighs almost nothing. And that's exactly the kind of upgrade campers are starting to look for. Not more gear, but less effort. But reducing the size of what you carry is only half the battle. What if one of the bulkiest things at your campsite could actually collapse when you don't need it? Coleman Snap NGO 45 Cutie. A cooler has always come with an annoying trade-off. You can have the insulation and durability of a hard cooler, but then you're stuck storing that giant box long after the camping trip is over. The Coleman Snap NGO 45 Cutie was designed to challenge that compromise. It's a hard-sided cooler that can collapse down to roughly 1/3 of its size, then return to a full 45-quart cooler in seconds. The 45-quart version can hold up to 76 cans without ice and is rated to keep ice cold for up to 55 hours. And that's what makes the idea so useful. You don't have to choose between a serious cooler and something that doesn't take over your garage, trunk, or storage closet. When you need it, you get the structure and insulation of a hard cooler. When the trip is finished, it folds down instead of becoming another piece of bulky camping equipment taking up space. Coleman unveiled the Snap NGO in March 2026 as its new collapsible hard cooler concept, showing just how much room there still is to rethink something as familiar as a cooler. But once campers start making their physical gear smaller and easier to manage, another limitation becomes obvious: power. BLUETTI Elite 300. For years, camping away from the grid meant deciding what you could live without. Phones needed charging, cameras needed batteries, lights needed power, and anything that demanded serious electricity usually stayed at home. The BLUETTI Elite 300 changes that equation by bringing a huge amount of stored energy into a portable system. It packs around 3014 Wh of battery capacity with a 400W inverter, giving campers enough power to run much more than basic USB devices. And that's why this isn't simply another power bank. It's closer to carrying a compact electrical system with you. Something that can support appliances, outdoor equipment, electronics, and other higher demand devices without needing a traditional generator. The real shift is convenience. Instead of planning an entire trip around how little electricity you can use, you can start planning around what you actually want to bring. And as portable power becomes more capable, camping doesn't necessarily become less adventurous. It simply means the things you normally have to leave behind don't always have to stay home. But there's another part of camping where people still tend to accept a lot of unnecessary hassle: cooking. Dialed camp kitchen. The problem with camp cooking isn't always the cooking. It's everything you have to unpack before you can start. Stove, cutting board, sink, utensils, storage, lighting, and a dozen little pieces somehow end up scattered across the campsite. The dialed camp kitchen takes a completely different approach by putting the core of a camp kitchen into one organized system. Its weather-resistant hard case includes a slide-out stove platform, integrated prep area, collapsible sink with a USB-powered faucet, modular storage, and built-in LED task lighting. Instead of arriving at camp and slowly turning a pile of equipment into a kitchen, you open one case, place it on its stand, and start deploying the setup. The company currently lists the system as a limited 2026 pre-order, with estimated delivery in August 2026. And that's the bigger reason a system like this makes sense. Campers aren't necessarily trying to bring more equipment. They're trying to make the equipment they already need work together better. One organized system can replace the familiar mess of separate boxes, bags, and loose accessories. But even the smartest campsite setup still has to solve the oldest camping problem of all, where you're actually going to sleep. Snow Peak Amenity Dome 3. A tent might seem like the one piece of camping equipment that doesn't need much reinvention. It's a shelter, you pitch it, and that's basically it. But the Snow Peak Amenity Dome 3 shows how much smoother that process can become when the structure itself is redesigned. This 2026 version of Snow Peak's long-running Amenity Dome introduces an outer frame setup that lets campers pitch the fly sheet before attaching the inner sleeping area. A particularly useful advantage when rain starts falling before you finish setting up. The inner tent can also stay attached during setup and takedown, while the redesigned vestibule adds dual entrances and more usable storage space. There's also a front panel that can transform into an awning with additional weather protection, giving the same shelter more ways to work around the campsite. At around 9 kilograms, it isn't trying to be an ultra-light backpacking tent. It's designed more for comfortable car camping while making the setup and living space more practical. And that's exactly why it belongs on this list. The innovation isn't about making a tent look futuristic. It's about taking something campers have been setting up the same way for decades and asking, why does it have to be this inconvenient? And that's what makes these camping upgrades so interesting. Campers aren't necessarily switching because they want more gadgets. They're switching because the old way keeps creating the same problems. A tiny pump removes the effort of inflation. A collapsible cooler solves the storage problem. A powerful battery changes what's possible off-grid. A modular kitchen cuts down the campsite clutter. And a redesigned tent makes setup and shelter more practical. These aren't just flashy additions to camping gear. They're examples of how small changes can completely change the way a trip works. Which one of these would you actually switch to on your next camping adventure? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed discovering these innovative camping technologies, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.